Today, we're doing something a little different. We're not just talking about economics. No, we're conducting a post-mortem. We're opening up the case file on a currency that has, for all intents and purposes, died. This is the forensic autopsy of the Iranian Rial. So let's begin the examination. To really understand what happened here, let's put ourselves right on the ground in Tehran. Picture this. You're a shopkeeper. In the morning, you sell a fresh loaf of bread, and the cash you get for it, well, it feels substantial in your hand. But its value is literally evaporating, just melting away like ice on a hot street. By the time the sun sets, that same stack of bills, it's basically worthless. And believe me, this isn't some kind of crazy exaggeration. At its absolute worst, this was the reality. 1,400,000 rials to a single US dollar. I mean, that's a number so big, it's hard to even wrap your head around it. Imagine eating a wheelbarrow full of cash just to buy a carton of milk. At that point, a currency stops being a tool for trade and just becomes a tragic punchline. So yeah, put on your investigator's hat with me. We're about to examine the body, identify the causes of death, and really understand how a nation's money committed what you can only describe as mathematical suicide. All right, our first piece of evidence in this autopsy, it's an external one. We're calling it the sanctions straitjacket. And this is all about the immense pressure being applied from the outside, literally squeezing the life out of the economy. So what are economic sanctions really? Well, in simple terms, they're basically a form of financial warfare. They're designed to completely isolate a country, cutting off its economic lifelines to try and force a change in its behavior. And for Iran, this was an absolutely critical factor. And the damage is just devastating. I mean, you're locked out of the global banking system. Your main source of income, oil, is completely choked off. You can't even import basic necessities easily. All of this puts a crushing, relentless weight on your currency, pushing its value down day after day after day. But, the wounds weren't just external. We also have to look at the internal hemorrhaging, which you might call the lingering economic hangover from decades of conflict, like that incredibly costly 8-year Iran-Iraq war. Decades of conflict and just massive, continuous military spending, well, it acts like a chronic illness for an economy. It completely drains the country's savings account, its national reserves, and it forces the government to rack up enormous debt. You're spending money you just don't have, which only compounds the pressure from the sanctions. The speed of this collapse was terrifying. This wasn't some slow decline. It was a total freefall. Can you imagine your savings, everything you've ever worked for, losing half of its value? Not in a year, not even in a month, but in a single week? So let me ask you this directly. If this happened to you, what would you do? I mean, really, what would you do? Would you scramble to convert your worthless paper into something real like gold? Or would you just buy a one-way ticket out of the country? This is the gut-wrenching choice millions had to face. There's no right answer here. There's only survival. Okay, so we've examined the external and the internal trauma. Now it's time for the coroner's report. What's the fundamental lesson we can pull from the wreckage of the Rial? What did this autopsy ultimately reveal? A strong nation needs a stable foundation. And in our modern world, that foundation is trust in its money. As one source puts it so well, you can't build an empire on a currency that needs a scientific calculator to buy groceries. When people need advanced math just to figure out the price of milk, that foundation has completely crumbled. So, the most crucial point is this. Money, at its very core, isn't just paper. It's a promise. It's a promise from a government that this note you're holding is going to have value tomorrow. The death of the Iranian Rial wasn't just a financial event. It was the catastrophic failure of that very promise. And that leaves us with one final, pretty sobering thought. When you tally up all the lost savings, the ruined businesses, and the shattered lives, you just have to ask, what is the true price of a broken promise?